folks. Welcome back to this week's edition of One at a Time. I'm Peter, I'm here. We are in southwestern Alberta. I'm not sure how well the camera's picking it up, but we've got a beautiful mountain view. Behind us, it's a bit of a windy afternoon, but the sun is out and the weather's beautiful. We are here at this random church, really, in southern Alberta. It's called St. Henry's Church. If you're really interested, you can go on Uppbeat and look it up. And we're here because this church has quite a nice feeder set up, some really nice examples of the birds taking advantage of supplemental feeding. And there's a couple unique examples that kind of hang out here. I'm not going to spoil them just yet, but hopefully we can get our eyes on them here at some point today. So stick with me and we'll see what we can find. Before even seeing any birds, the St. Henry's Church would reward us with wonderful views of Waterton National Park off in the distance. But it wouldn't be too long before a couple gray-crowned Rosy-Finches began to make their approach. There we go. So even now in the winter is so different from seeing them in the summer when it's just like up at the tops of mountains. Here a Rosy-Finch has approached a bit closer to us, and you can see through a comparison with common redpolls, a bird we're already familiar with, that they are quite a bit bigger than your average finch. They're pretty plump and chunky, and they're also not too afraid of people, which probably comes from the fact that they spend most of their summers in the high alpine and don't see a lot of people up there during the breeding season. These Rosy-Finches at a feeder are actually pretty interesting. You might notice that they look a bit different from each other. Let's freeze frame and have a look. The main difference that I'm picking out between these two birds is that the one on the left has way more gray on its head. You can see the malar stripe just below the bill there, its cheek and its crown are all this sort of pale gray, whereas the bird on the right just has a little gray eyebrow. Now, there are a lot of reasons that birds can be different from each other. Sometimes individual birds just look different, but this is a pretty stark comparison. Gray-crowned Rosy-Finches are sexually dimorphic, which means that the males and the females look different, but this is not something that's caused by sexual dimorphism here. What we have on our hands is actually two different subspecies of gray-crowned Rosy-Finch in the same place at the same time. Okay, I know what you're thinking. If you're not a birder, you're probably asking the question, wait, we already have species. That's already confusing enough, all these different species of birds. Now we have subspecies as well? Off the top of my head, a rough definition for a subspecies is a group of individuals that are genetically different enough from other members of their species to be considered a separate, unique population, but not different enough to be considered their own species. In the timescale of evolution, it probably just means they haven't had enough time to fully isolate. Pretty much all the time, subspecies are generated when a species lives in two geographically isolated areas. So it's quite rare to see two of them at the same time and place like we do with the Rosy-Finches here. So how many subspecies of gray-crowned Rosy-Finch do we actually have? Well, let's start out by dividing them into the brown-cheeked forms and the gray-cheeked forms. Here we can look at the couple that we've seen, as well as the ones that would be very rare to occur in Alberta that we did not see. The first one is, of course, the nominate subspecies. Nominate generally means the first one to be discovered, and it typically means that the subspecies name here, Tephrocotis, shares the full species name. The other subspecies we saw is Littoralis, also colloquially known as the Hepburn's Rosy-Finch, and these gray-cheeked guys come down from the northern Rockies in British Columbia, Yukon, and Alaska. So that explains why you see both of them in the same area, because they're sharing this winter territory. The other four subspecies are quite similar to the first two that we saw. There are two brown-cheeked forms and two gray-cheeked forms. And you can really see that some subspecies are basically impossible to tell apart. Really, they're only separated by geographic range. And other subspecies are very clear and obvious to tell apart, as is the case with the two that we saw today. This little Hepburn's Rosy-Finch here, probably born somewhere up in Yukon or BC, spends its summers high up in the mountains, probably never sees any people up there, and It's flown all the way down here in the winter to be joined by this little gray-crowned rosy finch that probably hasn't had as far of a journey. He might have been born just up in the Banff Mountains or something like that, just came down a little bit down the slopes. But in these areas on the wintering grounds, they have no troubles at all interacting and hanging out together, as you can see here on the bird feeders. Obviously, the fact that they're on their wintering grounds and not their breeding range is a strong contributing factor to why these birds can cohabitate and coexist so seamlessly here at the bird feeders. And it is also interesting to wonder what would happen if they did breed in the same area. Obviously, a lot of subspecies have intergrade zones, for example, yellow-rumped warblers in the Rocky Mountains, where they hybridize a lot and, pretty much everything becomes a blend. With rosy finches, there's not as much of an intergrade zone because a lot of the populations are so isolated. It's hard to say what would happen. Thank you so much for watching, everybody, as always, especially if you've made it this far. Hope you enjoyed. Rosy finches are definitely one of my favorite birds that you can see here in the winter. So it was really nice to get some good looks at them in good light, beautiful views from the church. If you live in that area, I highly recommend going and visiting the feeders there because it's quite fun to look at the rosy finches and watch them fly around. And it was also a really nice surprise for me to be able to see both subspecies that naturally occur in Alberta as well. So if you enjoyed, folks, don't forget to subscribe, share with your friends if you think they would like it as well. It helps grow the channel, grow the network. And I'll be back again next week. I have an exciting video planned, so make sure to turn your post notifications on so you are ready and can find out when the newest video is coming. Until next time, folks, happy birding. See you very, very soon, and have a great rest of your day.